Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We'll be starting today talking about the National Conference. Now, all of those decisions going on. We're joined this morning by Greg Ogiogwa, who is the Director of Public Affairs at Edo State. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. I mean, we've had so many perspectives on this matter, including those who thought that at the initial stage they were a bit skeptical. In fact, some of them completely pessimistic, saying, look, it won't achieve anything. Let's just forget about it. But you have those who are, well, overtly optimistic, saying, look, yes, we need to talk. We need to sort some of these matters out. Everything should start and end at the table. What do you think about all of those?
Well, start and end at the table is good. It's an ideal. But whether it is realistic is a different problem. The same situations, the same issues, the same quarrels and everything that we've had through the Constitution Assembly and the Political Reforms Conference and so on. It's still the same thing, the same issues, the same problems. So that anything would have come out of it very different is not very realistic. The alternative, I mean, everything they've done in most cases is a constitutional review. That's like building up and enacting a new constitution. So if the body that was set up was not a constitution drafting committee, and you have come out with something that is akin to a constitution, somehow, somewhere, you've lost the locus standi. So the people who were right to say that it will not achieve anything are people that I agree with, because in my opinion, it was just a bone thrown to the dog to distract the dog while the people go in and rob the house.
But you know, they say that, look, we've been able to agree on a lot of issues. Some say
that have been agreed on before. They've been agreed on before. They've been agreed on before over the last 20, 30 years. There are no new issues.
Including the derivation principle matter that they're considering now, federalism. Has that been agreed before?
It has always been. The Willings Constitution, report that founded the Federal Constitution of 1960, Independence Constitution, took into account agitations of the minorities and resources derived from the minority areas. So it's something that has been agitated for ever since. You recall that during the first civilian administration in Nigeria, derivation was the principle of revenue allocation, was the major principle. And so if we're here now asking for 18%, 21%, we're going backwards from where we were. I'm going further, much further back. We've always talked about one of the reasons that the component units of Nigeria, the north, the east, the west at that time, the regions agreed to a country, was that there will be certain autonomy of these federating units. Now we're further back from where it was in 1960. So it's not
away from that autonomy?
Yeah, I mean, we're not autonomous, are we? The states are not autonomous federating units. They're not. They're run in a unitary system that was inherited from the military, and that unitary system was set up in order to harness all national resources to fight a civil war.
Sorry to cut in there. You have representatives or people who came from your state at that particular conference, and we also recall what we saw when the Presidential Advisory Committee was in Benin, and that very unfortunate incident. Why is it that they've not been able to, some of them have not been able to expose some of your thinking, or that would seem to be the thinking of some other persons in Edo State or from your region at the conference?
Well, there was first the situation that anything that President Jonathan says is perfect for the South-South. And that's not necessarily true. And so there was a hysterical movement to justify that. The conference, the reasons for the conference, it will give us an opportunity to agitate for what we want. But it was not based on any factual information. It was not based on any factual statement. I mean, we still maintain, if you remember, that the APC always argued that the National Conference was a distraction.
You still think that?
Yes.
That's the situation?
Yes, there's nothing that they've come up with that has not been come up with before. In the last 60, 70 years of Nigerian history, nothing new whatsoever.
Because the argument is...
Probably gender equality, that's probably a new part that they've gone into. You know, but apart from that, nothing else as is new.
You know, it would seem that yours is quite different from the thinking of majority. Majority of the opinion that, well, it was a big success, except on the area of derivation and devolution of powers. And with those two, they say, well, they've not been able to come to a conclusion on that. But every other issue that has been brought before the conference has been well handled.
Well, you see, most problems that in Nigeria today derive from those same two issues that were not handled properly.
So you see those two as the icing?
Of course. You know, where power lies. If you devolve power from the center to the federating units, people will no longer fight so hard and so bitterly to get control of the center. That's the truth of the matter. So the moment that you leave things like resource allocation, and a mistake, part of the problems that we have too in the South-South is that we think that all the resources of Nigeria comes from the South-South, and that's not true. We don't, even the oil that we're claiming that we have, oil exports are not 100% from the South-South. So we should not continue to fool ourselves to think that, oh, it is our tongue, we produce all the wealth for Nigeria. Therefore, whether our candidate or our choice is right or wrong, you must, you know, kowtow to us in the South-South.
So why do you think that mentality is the case?
Because of a long overdue marginalization. Like I said, the Winnings report on minorities was I think it was 1956. That was when, and it was not only the South-South, it was the Middle Belt as well. You understand? It was also the Middle Belt. And it was also people like the Ikwere people who were living within the Eastern region. Because don't forget at that time that Port Harcourt, even Bayelsa now as it is, and a lot of those states were in the Eastern region. So there was always the fear of the minority being oppressed by the majority. And that was why that when they were giving independence to Nigeria and handing it over to the majority groups, they also within that constitution put something in place called, which is the ancestor of the federal character now. And that also is the basis for the convention of zoning and the rotation of power. That's the very basis of Nigeria's existence. So the moment you start to abrogate issues like zoning and power sharing, and that leaves the minorities without any option. I mean, it means that they don't have a choice whatsoever of the sharing of the national cake. Now, if that national cake was shared from the bottom to the top, you wouldn't have that problem. So you see those two issues of devolution of power and resource allocation are the two biggest problems that Nigeria has. So even if they agree to anything else and they come down with any other resolutions, they will not make very much sense if you haven't taken care of those two.
Well, you do not believe that this national conference was a success. What do you think was responsible for it? Is it in the makeup of the conference or it was the design of it? Do you think that Nigerians...
The very nature, first of all, it was not sovereign. And you can't have a sovereign conference where there is a constitutionally elected National Assembly. So even if you have a conference, it's all well and good. It's an opportunity for the people of Nigeria to vent. You know, they will have their say. But who will have their way? Because even if there are only 200, 100 and something people, 500 maximum in the National Assembly, the total number of people who have come together within that national conference cannot make any of their resolutions law, cannot, implement any of those resolutions that they've come up with at such great cost. Great cost. So
first of all, you say it was not sovereign. What other reason would you give for the conference not being a success?
A lot of the appointments, first of all, and a lot of the people that went there with a mindset. And that was the same mindset that they've had since the 50s and 60s. And the basis of that is the lack of trust and disharmony amongst the federating units. So if you haven't addressed that, and you go there and say that particular issue, whether Nigeria should stay together as a unified entity or not, once you don't address that and you say that is a forbidden area to go, everything else is window dressing.
Do you think that, because a lot of people will say that perhaps that was addressed, but perhaps not directly, in the sense that it was already assumed that we all want to stay together and all we had to do was fashion out the modalities?
If Boko Haram is hoisting flags in the northeast and so on, then obviously it's not it has not been totally addressed. It hasn't.